Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to unpack a stack of sources, giving you the insights you need, fast. And today, we're looking at something really quite significant that's been in the news. The promotion of General Datuk Limy Sang,
That's right. Malaysia's first ethnic Chinese three-star general.
which is, well, a pretty big deal, especially given the historical context, of the military often being seen as predominantly Malay.
Absolutely.
So our mission today is to really explore the many facets of Malaysian identity, culture, education, all of it. We want to connect these different threads, military service, national policies, individual stories, to understand what it really means to be Malaysian today. And we'll look particularly at how this national identity has evolved, focusing a bit on the history, the challenges, and, importantly, the contributions of the Chinese community.
Yes, and how all of that feeds into this idea of a unified Malaysian identity, which is still, a journey. So we'll peel back the layers, look at different viewpoints, different historical moments, to really get under the skin of these headlines like General Lim's promotion and the policies that have shaped things so profoundly. Military service, a defining thread of Malaysian identity.
Okay, let's kick things off with General Limy Sang's promotion. Why is his elevation so, well, noteworthy in Malaysia's military landscape?
Well, it's historic, really. As you said, the Malaysian Armed Forces, the ATM, has traditionally been Malay-dominated. So this promotion isn't just about one person's career.
It signals something bigger.
Exactly. It points towards a broader commitment to building a more representative and robust force. The defense minister even linked it to the sustainability needed for national defense objectives. It's a powerful symbol, you could say, of national unity potentially being reflected in military leadership.
That leads us nicely into something really interesting. The role different communities, particularly the Chinese community, have played in forming the military itself. What can you tell us about the memoirs of the Malaysian Armed Forces veterans? That's from MACFA, right?
Yes, the Malaysian Armed Forces Chinese Veterans Association. Makava's book is fascinating because it pushes back against some common perceptions. Brigadier General Dr. Leong Wing-Foon writes the foreword, and he talks about his own experiences during the Second Malayan emergence with the communist insurgency.
Right.
And he recalls very vividly the gallantry of servicemen from all backgrounds, different ethnicities, different religions, fighting side by side.
So a shared struggle.
Absolutely. The book really highlights the Chinese community's contribution to nation building, often overlooked. It shows Malaysians from all walks of life working together, sometimes in, life or death situations, but also just through day-to-day camaraderie.
Right.
It makes the point powerfully that Malays, Chinese, Indians, Orang Asal, they all played a part in building the modern Malaysian armed forces.
These stories really need to be heard more widely. Let's look at a more recent example. Lieutenant Colonel Dr. Yan Mayan. She's a Chinese female military doctor. What does her story tell us?
Dr. Yan Mayan's path is, well, quite unique. She chose voluntarily to join the military as a doctor.
Which is unusual.
Very unusual for Chinese Malaysians, and even more so for women. Her motivation wasn't just about a job. It seems rooted in an interest in history. Maybe her grandfather's service influenced her, and a real desire to be involved in humanitarian aid and disaster relief, HADR.
Like boots on the ground aid work.
Exactly. For instance, back in 2019, she spent 3 months providing medical aid to Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh. Conditions there were incredibly basic, medical facilities scarce, and she talks about the challenges, of course, like being separated from family, but her mindset is clear. She said something like, "Though we are doctors, we are first soldiers, need to obey orders."
Wow. That's real commitment.
It really is. Her story shows how individual dedication can transcend ethnic lines in service to the nation. 2, national culture policy, shaping and contesting identity.
It's really powerful hearing about that shared sense of service in the military. But turning to national policies, especially around culture, sometimes they seem to paint a different picture, don't they?
That's often where the complexities and controversies arise.
Let's talk about the National Culture Policy, the DKK, from the 1970s. What were its core ideas, and why did it cause such a stir?
Okay, so the 1970s DKK was based on 3 main government principles. First, the national culture should be based on the culture of the indigenous people, the Rakyat Asal.
Right, the native people of the region.
Correct. Second, elements from other cultures, Chinese, Indian, Arab, Western, etc., could be accepted if they were deemed suitable and appropriate.
Suitable and appropriate sounds subjective.
Exactly. And the third principle was that Islam is an important element in the national culture. Now, the controversy really ignited around that second principle, the suitable and appropriate part. Some interpreted it very narrowly, essentially saying non-indigenous cultural elements were only acceptable if they fit within the context of the first and third principles.
So fitting within Malay indigenous culture and Islamic values.
Pretty much. And that, understandably, caused significant concern in Malaysia's very multicultural society.
I can imagine. So how did communities, like the Chinese community, react to what they might have seen as, well, cultural exclusion?
Things definitely got politicized, especially after Prime Minister Hussein gave a speech in 1976 really emphasizing these three principles. And yes, some Malay leaders did seem to use that suitable and appropriate clause as a way to sideline or even exclude Chinese cultural forms from the national narrative.
Yeah, the response.
There was organized pushback. Various Chinese organizations came together and submitted the National Culture Memorandum in 1983. It was a major statement outlining their concerns and suggesting a more inclusive approach.
So when you have these top-down policies trying to define culture, how do people actually live with them? What's this idea of cultural citizenship?
That's a great question. Timothy P. Daniels, an anthropologist doing research in Malacca in the late 90s, explored this. He used the term cultural citizenship. He observed how ordinary people engage in what he called cultural customary politics. Basically, using everyday acts, sometimes passive resistance, like, say, openly displaying religious items associated with their non-Malay, non-Islamic faith. It was a subtle way of asserting their right to practice their own beliefs, their own culture, despite official narratives.
Interesting.
A really clear example he looked at was the lion dance. When the government put restrictions on performing it, it didn't disappear. Instead, it became an even more potent symbol of Chinese ethnic identity.
So the restriction backfired, in a way.
You could say that. It ties into ideas from thinkers like Frederick Barth, who said ethnicity isn't fixed. It evolves, often in response to external pressures. And Catherine Verdery pointed out how nation-building policies, even with good intentions, can sometimes end up hardening ethnic boundaries, making identities more rigid, which can, ironically, lead to conflict.
That's a really crucial point. Policies aiming for unity can sometimes divide. So where has this led? How did the policy evolve? What about the 2021 National Culture Policy, the DECAN?
The 2021 DECAN. Generally, it's seen much more positively. There's a real emphasis on inclusiveness and diversity this time around.
What are its principles?
It has four main ones, building on the Rukun Negara, the national principles, being based on local people's culture, note the broader term, local people, promoting high-value culture and pure religious practices, and ensuring cultural diversity and sustainability. There's also a stated focus on achieving muafakat, or consensus, in how it was developed.
So a shift in tone and substance from 1971.
Definitely. It seems to embrace more of a multicultural nation-state idea, using more inclusive language. But, challenges remain.
Such as?
Well, consistent funding for cultural research is still an issue, according to some critics. And interestingly, the term cultural citizenship wasn't explicitly included in the official DECAN document, despite its relevance.
A cornerstone of community and national identity.
Okay, we can't really talk about national identity without getting into education. It's so fundamental to community identity. Let's look at some of the historical challenges, especially for the Chinese community. What about the 1920 School Registration Ordinance?
Right, that's going back a bit, but it's foundational. This was legislation in the Strait Settlements aimed at controlling Chinese schools.
Control in what way?
Registration, supervision, curriculum oversight, essentially bringing them under tighter government control. And it didn't go down well. It sparked this huge anti-registration movement right across Malaya. And what's remarkable is that it was a genuine mass movement.
Not just elites.
No, it involved workers, merchants, scholars, a broad cross-section. It's often seen as the first sort of modern public protest by the Malayan Chinese community. They used peaceful means, like petitions apparently over 200,000 signatures, to express what they called the public will. It really marked the start of the organized Chinese education movement.
Fascinating. Okay, let's jump forward to more recent times. The Chinese independent high schools and their exam, the UEC, they showed incredible resilience during the COVID pandemic, didn't they?
They really did. Holding the 2020 unified examination, the UEC, despite all the pandemic chaos, was frankly remarkable.
How did they manage it?
Domzong, that's the main body overseeing these schools, went to extraordinary lengths. They consulted schools constantly, juggled schedules, set up makeup exams, and crucially, developed really comprehensive health SOPs, standard operating procedures, which got official approval.
And this was while government exams were facing issues.
Exactly. The UEC has run uninterrupted for 45 years. In 2020, when government exams like the SPM, PT3, UPSR faced delays, even cancellations, the UEC went ahead. It really speaks volumes about the dedication, the organization, and maybe the self-reliance within that specific education community.
It's not just Chinese medium schools, though. English medium schools were also incredibly important early on. What's their story?
Oh, absolutely crucial. And often, maybe surprisingly for some today, founded by Christian missionaries. They were real pioneers.
For example,
Well, take the Anglo-Chinese College in Malacca, way back in 1818, possibly the world's first Anglo-Chinese school. Its goal was to teach both Western and Chinese knowledge. It even produced the first Chinese translation of the Bible and early multilingual dictionaries. Chinese, English, Malay, Cantonese, Hokkien, really groundbreaking stuff.
and others.
Then there's the Penang Free School from 1816, founded with this incredibly progressive ideal of being free from racial, class, and religious restrictions. Universal access, basically.
Did it stay that way?
Well, it evolved. It later became more of an English boys' school and eventually came under colonial government supervision. Later on, you get the Methodist school springing up late 19th, early 20th century. Think Anglo-Chinese School Singapore in 1886, Penang ACS in 1891.
And they were popular.
Very much so, especially with influential Chinese merchants like Ten Jiak Kim in Singapore, who saw the value in English education. What they really did was establish a full K-12 system quite early. And importantly, they were pioneers in girls' education too, which was a huge challenge against traditional norms back then. People like Sophia Blackmore, Julie Batty leading the Tamil Girls' School.
Brave work.
Definitely. These schools fostered a kind of Anglo-Chinese spirit, educating Chinese students in English, often emphasizing, Western logic. Of course, they increasingly operated under government supervision, often linked to receiving subsidies, for Islam, Malay identity, and the concept of a nation.
So we're seeing these complex layers, military service, culture policies, education systems, all feeding into what it means to be Malaysian. And central to much of this, especially for the Malay community, is the role of Islam. How does that intertwine with identity?
It's deeply intertwined. Islam is constitutionally the federal religion of Malaysia. The 2020 census showed about 63.5% of the population identifying as Muslim, mostly Sunni of the Shafi'i school. But here's the key tension. Article 3 of the federal constitution states Islam is the religion of the federation.
But
Article 11 guarantees freedom of religion for everyone else. So you have this built-in constitutional balancing act.
which leads to debate, I assume.
Constantly. The ongoing discussion about whether Malaysia is truly a secular state or an Islamic state stems directly from this constitutional structure.
And how does this religious aspect shape the very definition of what it means to be Malay in Malaysia? It sounds quite specific legally.
It's extremely specific. Article 160 of the Constitution essentially defines a Malay person. And a core part of that definition is that a Malay must be Muslim. Legally, you cannot be Malay if you're not Muslim.
So conversion plays a role.
Yes, through the concept of Masuk Malayu, literally entering Malayness or becoming Malay. If a non-Malay converts to Islam, they can gain legal Malay status. This grants them access to certain Bumikutura privileges, things like affirmative action and university admissions, discounts on property provided they also meet other criteria, like habitually speaking Malay and adhering to Malay customs.
That's quite a system.
It is, and it has led some commentators to critique it, suggesting that Islam in Malaysia, in this legal sense, can sometimes appear community-specific rather than reflecting a more universal Islamic ethos.
How does this play out in everyday life and governance, the intersection of culture and religion?
Well, you have the dual legal system, civil courts for everyone, but also Sharia courts that have jurisdiction over Muslims, but only in specific areas like family law, divorce, inheritance, and certain religious offenses like apostasy.
And beyond the courts.
You see religious regulations impacting daily life. The National Fatwa Council, for example, has issued rulings against things like yoga, or even against certain depictions of supernatural beings. There's also been, cultural discouragement of non-Muslims, using phrases like rest in peace.
And culturally.
Islam's influence on Malay culture is profound. You see it in the language with many Arabic loanwords.
Yeah.
Islamic rituals are woven into Malay customs. The tudun, or hijab, is commonly worn by Muslim women. You also get controversies where religious interpretations clash with older traditions, like some state governments banning traditional Malay shadow puppet plays, wayang kulit, which sparked debates about heritage versus religious rulings.
And politics.
Oh, inevitably. Religion is often part of the political discourse. For instance, former PM Mahathir has criticized the Islamic Party, PAS, accusing them of using religion potentially to divide the Muslim community for political gain. towards a unified Malaysian national identity.
Okay, so let's try and tie all these incredible threads together. We've talked about military service showing unity, contested cultural policies, the resilience in education systems, the deep link between Islam and Malay identity. How does all this contribute to the ongoing, maybe unfinished, project of forming a unified Malaysian national identity?
Well, I think the 2021 National Culture Policy, DACAN, is a really important marker here. Its explicit aim for a multicultural nation-state model is a significant shift, conceptually at least, from the more assimilationist undertones of the 1971 policy.
The language seems key.
The language, yes, using terms like local people, emphasizing consensus or muafakat. It suggests an official recognition, perhaps driven by decades of lived experience and advocacy, that diversity is the fabric of Malaysia. The historical struggles we've talked about in education, in cultural expression, particularly for communities like the Chinese, haven't just been points of friction. They've actively shaped the conversation and pushed for this greater recognition within the national framework.
So it's an ongoing negotiation.
Absolutely. It's not a finished product. Moving towards a truly unified identity, one that everyone feels part of, means constantly navigating these complexities. Yeah. It requires, I think, critical thinking, an openness to multiple perspectives, and a willingness to grapple with the uncomfortable parts of history and policy.
It's been an incredible deep dive, really getting into the layers that make up Malaysian identity, from those individual acts of service in the military to the big national policies on culture and education and that central role of Islam. It's so clear that defining Malaysian isn't simple. It's dynamic, it's evolving, woven from so many different threads.
Yes, exactly. It underscores that national identity isn't some static thing handed down. It's constantly being made and remade by history, yes, by policy, definitely, but also crucially by the everyday lives and experiences of all its diverse peoples. Understanding these intricate connections is really the key to appreciating the richness and, frankly, the ongoing evolution of Malaysia.
Thank you so much for unpacking all of that with us.
My pleasure.
And thank you for joining us on the deep dive.